And we're live.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. And welcome back.
Cheers.
We've missed you all.
Good to be
yes.
back.
Very good to be back. We've got a very exciting season planned. So I'm really excited about this. I know you guys are too. So shall we kind of give a quick rundown to kind of explain some of our social media a bit more?
Yeah.
Hi, Jolene. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else? Oh, and David. Cool. Yeah, feel free, just start writing in the chat, and just so we can kind of get a gauge of who's in here. So yeah, this season, and Darren, of course, our VIP star.
It wouldn't be Score Connect without Darren.
Yeah. Jolene also. Jolene's
true,
been
that's
a
true.
very avid supporter. So yeah, this season, I've kind of alluded to it, and we've mentioned it in our social media stuff. But we've got we've kind of tried to set this one out as more of like a sort of curriculum. Not to be too academic about it, but that we have a kind of overarching plan, and tried to design this a little bit more rather than kind of, let's see, kind of what we're up to week by week. So we're going to be launching a project today, where we're going to give the option of, you can download a film, a short film, one that I had previously scored, and it's going to have just a little bit of kind of some background music for different parts under a scene, but then the other kind of underscore has been taken out and muted. And so that film is directed by Vicky Kistner, who's a good friend of mine, and she's going to be joining us on the stream later in a few weeks' time. So the kind of plan is, throughout the week, we've picked particular topics to kind of look more at the process of scoring a film, sort of from start to finish. So this week we're going to talk about thematic writing. Then we're going to be talking about kind of setting music to picture. We're going to have a couple orchestration reviews, kind of probably, I think we have one week 3 and then another sort of at the end of the season. And then we're going to have our director friend Vicky on to kind of chat a bit more about her experience. I'm really excited about the first time she comes on, because she's someone who I've kind of seen, over the years that I've known Vicky, go from, someone kind of out of film school and has been struggling and trying to kind of really push through it and has worked super hard and is now somebody directing regular blocks on TV. So I think that chat is going to be super inspiring, and a lot of questions to kind of talk about what that's like from her side. And then we're going to get a chance to kind of review any works in progress on that film. And then the week after that, Vicky's going to come back and actually give some feedback on her own film. So I think that's also a really unique opportunity that I'm very excited about for this, that instead of just kind of getting feedback from us as film composers, you get it from the director who wrote the film. And then we have another session planned with a mixing engineer that we want to bring on, so we can get a little bit more kind of nitty gritty in some of the production stuff. And then we also have recorded a very good interview with our friend Jean-Stéphane, who's a fantastic top Hollywood orchestrator, been a mentor to a few of us, and has had just the absolute best mentors that one could ask for himself. So there's going to be lots of just golden nuggets with him. So anyway, that's kind of a general overview of what we're looking forward to this season. But we've also published kind of the dates and topics. So if there's particular ones that pique your interest, make sure you kind of mark those down on your calendar and share with your friends. I think, it's just an exciting opportunity to kind of put all this stuff together.
Sure.
So you guys want to kind of add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a really, really cool opportunity. And I just want to say, on behalf of everyone else, thank you, Mike, for putting that together. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to get to write some music and hear our discussions with the director and hear some feedback from us and the director. It'll just give you even more insight, especially if you're more at the beginning of your journey. Maybe you haven't actually worked with a director before. that's perfect for you. But even if you're more experienced, I think we can always all learn more. I think I'm looking forward to learning from this too. So
I think one thing as well that we were keen to have a bit more focus on is because we always talk on a grand scale. Almost every kind of analytical opinion we have is based on big Hollywood things, and but realistically, if you just graduated or even not yet graduated, you're not going to be working on those sorts of films, and there's a different way of scoring them. And so we wanted to focus on that process through these 8 weeks, to see, yes, look at the big stuff, the stuff we really like, but how does that apply to a short film format? And we're going to start with that today as well.
Cool. So shall we kind of dive in? We'll be kind of talking a little bit more about that project at the end of the stream. But yeah, I guess today we want to talk a little bit about sort of thematic writing, kind of just the very beginning of that process. Sam, maybe you want to kind of take the lead on this one a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, today we wanted to talk about, we've got a couple of examples, contrasting examples, let's say, of how a theme is written. And, please do add to the comments if you've got any examples of what you think is a really good bread and butter theme that is written with the idea of being used elsewhere, that something that represents something, different ways of writing a theme. We're really keen to hear your thoughts on this. We've picked out 2 examples, the first of which is Hedwig's theme, and we picked that because there's obviously many choices, but that one seemed a good one to us, partly for our future streams where we're going to talk about scoring to picture, how a theme is then used and adapted and developed. But today we want to focus on, how do you actually write a theme? What choices do you have to make, to make that theme arrangeable? What makes a good theme is basically what we want to talk about today. Our first example, Hedwig's theme, I personally think is a superb example of thematic writing. Partly because of just the content, the musical content that there is to work with. You've got an A theme, which is the one that everyone knows, because that's what Warner Brothers ended up using as the logo for Harry Potter. You've got the B theme, which is standard John Williams. You've got another option, basically, that's perhaps a bit more fluid, a bit more not romantic as it often is, but there's another option there. And then you've got the C theme, which kind of is a different representation of flying, as John Williams does so many flying themes and he does it so well, but there's that which is kind of broomstick flying, I think, but it's all crammed into this one theme called Hedwig's theme, and I think that's sort of open to debate whether it actually is Hedwig's theme or not, but as it is on album 1, it is called Hedwig's theme. And I think maybe now's the time to play it, Mike. And let's just hear it.
Yeah, let's have a listen through and then chat. And Darren's already got a good suggestion of the WandaVision theme, so we can also kind of have a listen to that in a little bit. I haven't seen any of the series. I honestly know very, very little about it myself. But
it's all anyone is talking about.
No spoilers.
Kind of the fun of it. Cool. Let's have a quick listen to. Well, I'll just play through quite a bit of this, and we'll see kind of how far we get. It's a little over 5 minutes, but I think maybe once we kind of get to the C theme, we can probably wrap it up. So Hedwig's theme, as I'm sure most of you are very familiar. go up to there for now. I was just letting it run because it's just so much fun.
Oh my god,
Missed the
so
double
good.
ending, the John Williams double ending.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jolene was saying we all look so hype. I think just because we are. And we're all just genuine nerds and happy to be here.
It's interesting you use that word because, like, someone on the stream correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is an example of something written specifically for the trailer, or at least part of it was, because I don't know if you guys remember, but when the trailer came out, it was a massive thing, and this was on it, and there were owls everywhere, and I think that's basically why he called it Hedwig's theme. But actually, I mean, we'll get onto this next week, but you know, it isn't that simple. It doesn't represent Hedwig really, but God, it's good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Well,
You got everything.
I guess just to kind of, so what does it represent? And I think, it's, again, kind of feel free to share your opinions on this. I think it's generally sort of represents magic and the wizarding world, so it's kind of the whole world that they're in. So anytime, it's then used whenever there's something that represents magic or, something that's kind of, existing that's peculiar to that world, it becomes really useful. And so I think this is a great example because there's so many things about it. Actually, Michael and I were talking about this yesterday, that it is like, now it's almost a stereotype that if you use Celeste, it's sort of like it represents magic in a certain way. And I think there's a lot that you can translate to kind of the actual technical composition of how that represents that world. And I think certain choices in the instrumentation represent that, like the Celeste, and all of these sort of whimsical runs and that kind of thing really contribute to that. So that's sort of where, if he's trying to create the sound of magic, there's a lot of then technical facility that sort of directly translates to it.
Well, the interesting thing as well is that, oh, sorry, Shane, but regarding the Celeste as well, that, it's not purely a Celeste sound, it's a Celeste merged with synthesizer, which gives it that sort of ethereal, otherworldly sound. So in and of itself is sort of its own magical sound created just for this film that gives it a unique flavor that you wouldn't really get with an acoustic Celeste, because that would be a lot more sort of top heavy and a lot more bell-like, whereas this is just, it sort of just glistens, doesn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's with the benefit of hindsight that I look back at and I'm reading too much into it with some kind of weird synesthesia or something, but like those first two films, the Chris Columbus films, yes, I'm a bit of a Harry Potter nerd, were like gold. Like the titles were gold. Later it got darker and more silver and grown up, and this was like bright magic world, welcome. And there's something about the Celeste that it is that opening, that logo. It's gold and bright and but not quite normal. It's out of the ordinary, but it's got that glossiness that I think you're talking about, Michael. And that's what Chris Columbus made those films to be, is this kind of really uber glossy, magical version, I think, and it got more gritty later on. And that's kind of how I see it now. I don't know if that's what John Williams saw at the time, or if I'm just reading into it, but it makes total sense to me.
I was going to say just two little thoughts about this. The first thing is that, I feel like it definitely does represent magic, but it's what I love about it is that it's got different aspects and different layers to it. Like, there's moments where it feels quite sinister. There's moments where it feels very playful. There's a moment where it feels very exciting. There's a moment where it feels very intriguing. It's not just, this is magic, because it's not just one note. It's like it's like if you have a recipe, it's not just one flavor. There's a huge variety in there, which is what makes it so beautifully adaptable to lots of different situations, like we talked about.
That's why.
The other thing,
that's why maybe. No, I mean, that's why maybe it has all these flavors, as you say. Maybe because it was written specifically for the trailer for the film, so it has like basically it's like eating one dish that has everything on the menu, so that tells you what's on the menu in this
right.
restaurant.
If you see this film, you're going to get all of this. Yeah,
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say, just because this will anticipate something we're going to talk about later, but this is definitely a type of music. So when we're thinking about writing a theme, this is a type of music that draws attention to itself. Like, it stands out. You're listening to this and it is grabbing your attention and sticking itself to the forefront of the production. So I think that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind, is that decision was already made before you can write a piece like this. If you know that you're going into writing a theme for a different kind of film, or the director has a different philosophy of the function of film music, you can't really write a theme like this. So it's one of those beautiful things where the opportunity was there, but then the execution really delivered on it.
Yeah, like he knew he was John Williams, and he knew he was knowledge. And he knew that he was writing for the first film in a already massive franchise that had to be successful, and he knew he'd have the room for this theme to be played in its fullest, which you know we just about heard there. You know, he knew that's how it was going to be in the film, so it had to be, you know, massive. And I think just before I sort of extrapolate on that, well, I think it was you, Ali, that was saying earlier, he's not afraid to write impossible parts, and that violin part after the initial celeste is impossible. Like I don't know if you guys have heard it in concert, but it's never nearly as good as the recording.
I put that in the chat that it's actually used as an audition excerpt for the LSO.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah. It's absolutely impossible. And here, like, I've heard it a couple of times live, and it's so weak because they can't get the pressure on the bow. And it's so brave to do that, and it's so effective in recorded form, which is what we're dealing with.
Yes, and just a quick testament as well to London session players, because the LSO actually didn't do the first film. This was an entirely freelance orchestra, which just goes to show how well they all play together, especially those string runs.
Wow.
Yeah, guys, can I jump in?
It took them like a couple of weeks a week. I think it took them a whole week to get that part right. I don't know, maybe you guys, Harry Potter nerds.
Well, I know Everton Nelson, who played in the session, you know, said that I don't think it ended up taking a week, because it was something like 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks recording in the actual studio. So I think they actually knocked it out in a day, which is, you know, equally so impressive.
Guys, can I just jump in with, because I sort of asked the chat, you know, kind of what they thought sort of helps contribute to making this sound sort of magical. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. So mention kind of, you know, the fact that it modulates so often, as well as the chromaticism, and also Darren mentioned too, kind of the rhythm, that it's often switching time signature. And I think a lot of those together kind of contribute to the same thing that makes it feel very free. So that might be, you know, kind of one overall aspect that he was, you know, trying to kind of achieve with that. And then also Billy mentioned the, you know, all these different flourishes and stuff that go, you know, and it's, again, kind of makes it feel very free and like it's sort of going in all these different directions.
Well, one thing in particular in regards to the harmony is, I think that's... in this particular instance, it's actually the melody that determines the harmony underneath. And it's very clear that because it's a very well-written melody and it's very forward-moving, you can really stick any harmonization under there and it would work. I mean, there's no logical reason why he picked the chords they did, apart from being borrowed from other keys and just sounding sort of wonky. But I think it's a testament to a good melodic theme that eventually just makes it way back. It doesn't really stray from E minor, even though it sort of goes to different keys throughout, although it's sort of a Prokofiev-esque type harmonic progression where it goes all over the place and then comes back home.
But he's so good at that. He's so good at that. He's so solid. You know, if you look at the first notes, that it spells out the arpeggio. Oh, sorry. It's all really heavily E minor, and yet it never feels perfectly comfortable. And I think there's something as well, like it's definitely got a dance feel about it, and it's got a kind of Eastern European rooted, I think, kind of feel about it. Like maybe it's the tambourine that's adding to that, but you know, it has that dance feel to it that isn't. So I guess it's got that symphonic, you know, quasi Eastern European grounding, but he's doing all this extra stuff on top of it. to make it sound not quite Muggle. You know what I mean?
Can I just read something? I think this is an amazing point that Natalia raised. She said, "Hi, everyone. Elaborating on the question, how is it that we all agreed that those things we were just talking about represent magic? Seems like if we have Celeste, chromaticism, modulation, that's magic. But how do we actually know? None of us is a wizard or does magic." I think it's such a wonderful point.
Speak for yourself.
Because, yeah, speak for yourself. No, but I think that's a really insightful point, because so many of these like extra musical associations we make are very subtextual. They're a lot to do with how we feel, how a piece of music makes us feel, and then we associate that with what we're seeing. So I think that really gets to the heart of it. When you're writing a theme, you're after making people feel a certain way, and if they do, then they'll come along with you for the ride. You know, I'm hearing this piece of music, I'm feeling all of these emotions, and then I'm seeing the imagery, and I'm connecting that to the context of the world I'm learning about in Harry Potter. And to me, they just form this symbiosis, and that's a really special thing when it happens like that.
Well, I think what's important with that is, yes, we're all agreeing. I think the magical and otherworldliness are somewhat synonymous here for a start. So, you know, there are similar things going on in ET, stuff like that. But I think what's actually important is we're focusing on what makes it sound magical, but actually there is a solid grounding as well in stuff we are familiar with, and I think that's very, very deliberate as well. There is it's a symphonic grounding, and that's because the whole point of Harry Potter is that he is us and we get to be wizards, you know. Well, I think and so it needs to feel like that
as well. That, you know, there's a little bit of hindsight bias as well. We always assume that, you know, oh, it was always this magical, but at the same time, in the way that the music affects our interpretation of the film also affects our interpretation of the music. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it's easy to say like it automatically sounds magical. I mean, I think it was somebody who was saying in the chat, I wonder how it would feel if we heard the music first with no visuals. It's sort of hard to say unless you found somebody who's managed to not see the film, you know, 20 years later. But it's really sort of interesting just because, well, I'll tell the quick little story that I was talking to you guys about a few days ago in regards to the Star Wars incident. And that's in Chamber of Secrets. It was a very busy year for John Williams working on Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, Chamber of Secrets, and Attack of the Clones. And there was a clerical error in which one of the cues from Star Wars got mixed into Harry Potter. And so there are actually two identical cues between the film. It's the Quidditch scene in Chamber of Secrets, and it's the speeder chase at the beginning of Attack of the Clones. And the funny thing is that despite being drastically different films, they work so well in context. And that just goes to show the malleability of our understanding of music and applying not only the music to the film, but the film to the music for meaning.
That's true.
Yeah, I think this is all, you know, kind of a really interesting point and sort of like, you know, in some ways a crux of this discussion, which is that, you know, how do you actually translate those feelings? Because we can talk about like what we need for a theme, you know, okay, we want it to represent this kind of character or this feeling or emotion, but there isn't a roadmap that's like, well, this, you know, sad plus this equals E flat minor, you know, because it all works in context. So I mean, perhaps that kind of answers this question in a way, is that really you do need that visual, you know, because we could take sort of chromaticism and modulations and apply it to Taxi Driver, and it's a completely different, you know, film. So it's not
context
the language
is everything
on its own.
Yeah, but I was thinking about the Vertigo theme that you shared before, Shane. And well, apart from the meme, I'm not talking about that. I was talking about the actual theme. But in regards to what you're saying, Mike, in some cases, in my opinion, there is like the motion of the music, of the actual notes on the score. They make you think about something. In this case, like all those chromaticisms and those fast runs, it makes you think of flying. That's why we have the same thing, well, similar thing in ET, as Sam was saying before. And sometimes that you can find that in Vertigo as well. You have those two minor chords, major 7,
Minor major 7.
going going one in one direction and the other one exactly the opposite direction. It makes you feel not actually dizzy, but it gives you the idea of like uncertainty. So I don't know.
Yeah, you're totally right. There are also little, like, I start to wonder, why is it that kind of like fast violin passage makes me think of flying? I don't know. Maybe it's because like the sound of the bow moving so quickly on the strings, the high frequencies kind of sound like wind whistling past your ears when you're going fast. You know,
Probably,
there's so
or you're
many of these,
imagining,
like,
or you're imagining the notes going up and down.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
true.
always think it's about kind of the lack of bass, actually. If you compare like a lot of John Williams flying themes, like either E.T. or Hook as well, it always gives you that sense of flight when he kind of takes away the bass line. It's sort of like you've been presented with something that's really big and grounding, and then as soon as it cuts the bass out from under you, it feels like you're not on the ground anymore.
That's amazing, though, that 3 people can have 3 completely different.
Yeah.
But I think they're
approaches.
probably all going on like on a subconscious level, because it's such a complex thing.
Yeah.
Our complex thing our brain is doing when we're listening to a piece of music and interpreting it through a story. It's like one of the most complex things you can do. So I'm sure there's huge things we're not even talking about that are actually going on a subconscious level.
But this is kind of, we have the benefit of years of our own experience, but everyone else's as well, that is fed into their music. And so we now have the option of utilizing those techniques that, you know, we know people seem to associate with certain things, or breaking rules, and, you know, all of that is cumulative. So we've got the experience of, you know, like John Williams has had the experience of Prokofiev to build on, and, you know, etc. But I think guys, we need to just shift slightly in what we're talking about. This is a massive film that had a massive trailer that had, and this theme is 5 minutes long, which is the length of short films. You know, you don't have room to write something like this. So what lessons can we learn now from Hedwig's theme by John Williams that are applicable to a student film, or, you know, just any short format film? And I think one thing that we need to sort of ask ourselves is, and these are questions that need to be discussed with filmmakers of, you know, of said film, you know, what is the music trying to achieve in this space of time, and therefore what is the theme representing? That's the question I'm opening up now. Is like, if say, like, put it this way, if it's kind of hard to imagine, but if, you know, you had Harry Potter, but it's only 5 minutes, suddenly you've got completely different priorities. You know, is it, you have to tell the story somehow, but you can't write the Wizarding World in 5 minutes of
Well, I guess when it comes to that short amount of time, efficiency in terms of ideas is really important, and encapsulating the idea. Like, as we were talking about at the beginning of Harry Potter, as soon as you hear those first couple notes, you're like, I'm right here. I'm in the Wizarding World. I know where we are. And so obviously with a much shorter time period, being succinct in your musical ideas and conveying that specific atmosphere, if there's an atmosphere to be had, is an important thing to do sort of quickly and efficiently. Obviously, you're not going to be able to have the luxury of writing a theme that's as lengthy as this, but
well, it's not just the length of the theme itself, it's opportunities for development. You don't have any time to, you know, if your theme represents a character and then is attached to that character's development, you usually in a short film, you don't really have that time. You don't see that development in the same way. So is tying the theme to a character a wise decision? Should it be more of a tonal theme? Should it be more of a situational thing? You know, there are suddenly completely different priorities. And actually, but what we can take from Hedwig's theme is, yes, it represents the Wizarding World, you know, on a big scale. But we're talking about the elements that represent very specific kind of feelings and experiences, and they're the things that you can learn from and put into, you know, why we're talking about, why did the Celeste sound magical? Well, you know, if you need to make something sound magical, maybe a Celeste is an option for your 5 minute short film. You know, these are the things that you can take from that.
Well, what I was
Guys,
going to say is, oh, sorry, Mike. I just had a short point.
Yeah, go for it. Then I think maybe we move on to another theme. Just
sure. I was just going to say, applying what you're talking about, Sam, to learn from Hedwig's theme to apply for a shorter film. There is a lot to do with gesture. If you don't have the time to develop anything over a long period of time, sometimes you can hint at it in a very short way that is a strong communication of an idea through a musical gesture. Like, for example, in the B theme, where we have the and then we have the like that has such a playful, like magisterial, kind of royal, to me, feeling to it, and it's evoked in about half of a second. That's it. That's all you get. But to me, it says a lot. So I think if you're wanting to communicate something in a very short space of time, look to musical gestures rather than necessarily a melody or a long chord progression.
One thing I'd just add to that, Shane, before Mike goes on, is that there's a fine line there with something gestural being, because we in longer form stuff we think of that as leitmotif, and with a short film you don't have the benefit of having heard it before. It sounds like an oxymoron, but you know, you can only state things once or twice in a short film, and so the weight and the association that comes with those gestures is somewhat limited. So it has to be super effective. It has to be really like distilled and very focused. Not saying that other leitmotif in longer form things doesn't, but
very intentional, isn't it? Very intentional with your reasons for doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And even presenting a theme as a short theme at the beginning of the short film, and if it's a theme that's like the leitmotif for the main character, and presenting the theme at the beginning and the theme at the end with small changes, that can tell a lot about the evolution of a character, in my opinion.
Agreed.
Guys, let's jump on to showing another example. Should we show, we had kind of planned to show The Crown, or we could also show WandaVision. I'm not familiar with WandaVision.
I would do I would do The Crown only because it's really contrasting to what we've already had. WandaVision's got sort of, is Christoph Beck, I think. And he's a bit more sort of florid than The Crown is.
Cool. Let me just grab this quick. I'll go from the season 1, just to make sure we get sort of the original theme.
Yeah.
I think this is just, here we go. Cool. Okay, so this is the Crown theme, and just to kind of provide, we thought of this as something that is drastically different, and I think kind of one, kind of initial major difference is that when we think about a theme, the Harry Potter one is very obviously, this big melodic theme. You can just take that melody and use it as a kernel kind of anywhere, and it's really easily moved around. This one doesn't really have a melody. It's really a theme out of harmony. So I think it's also just, to point out that a theme can really be, it could be a melody, it could be a set of chords, and it could even just be a sound. Like we mentioned before the stream, like the T-1000 theme from Terminator 2, or there's parts of the White Walker theme in Game of Thrones that are just a sound that can really evoke something. So kind of as another take, and then we'll discuss kind of our opinions on how effective we think this might be. So here's a Crown theme. Start it from the beginning. Well, sorry guys. I think we might have cut out for a moment. So I hope, can you hear us all right now? On my Twitch feed now, it seems like we're kind of back up and running.
Yeah, I think we're back up.
Cool. I think it might just be simultaneous streaming on my internet, which could be a problem. So, okay, yeah, I think we could kind of hear it now, but perhaps it was. I mean, it seemed to work fine when we were listening to John Williams, so. I'm not sure for everybody kind of watching if that's worth going through again, in case that was completely unheard, or if we should just kind of continue to talk about it.
Maybe let's just get started, and then if
Let's
everyone
talk about it.
says,
Yeah,
so we can go back. You can also listen to it in your own time,
Yeah.
or maybe you've heard it already.
yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess just kind of going on the preface to that, I think, with this, I mean, we were sort of discussing this the other day too. It's, the theme itself, I think, is based on a Purcell tune. So it's kind of, trying to evoke a particular sort of time period, but it's not meant to be like a traditional British period drama. It's kind of anti-period drama in that way. But I also think it sort of falls short in some ways of just being very generic. So it's kind of at the same time, you could, in my opinion, you could take this theme and you could put it in front of just about any Netflix show and it would probably work. So it's not really specific to a particular world or character.
I would say,
well, in a different way than what Michael was saying before about the same cue in Harry Potter and
Yeah.
Yeah.
not in the same.
I'm sort of going to play devil's advocate to myself here because I'm not a massive fan of it, but it does. I think it serves a purpose. I think I didn't actually realize that it's based on a Purcell tune, and I think that makes total sense to me.
Mhm.
That because it won't be trying to evoke a time period because it's far too early, but it is trying to evoke a feeling of history and because the whole show, if you haven't seen it, is about the weight of the crown on the person on whom it sits, and being Elizabeth II, and with that comes the history of those that came before, and that makes total sense that it's Hans Zimmer, isn't it, who wrote the theme, who would use that. Again, to play devil's advocate, I think it is doing a job. It's a big thing when it came out. It was one of the first, right? And there's a thing on Netflix that, there's a Netflix syndrome. I think, it's never kind of been said to me, but I think people write their themes fully in the knowledge that people are going to skip it, because you have the option to skip intro, and it's a minute and a half or so, I think, or a minute, I don't know.
Yeah,
and
minute 24.
Yeah, and people are going to skip that. They do. I did when I watched it because I heard it. But I think when you do listen to it,
Would you skip Hedwig's theme if it was 1 minute and a half?
in a 40 plus episodes franchise, maybe, I don't know.
Sam,
So you're saying you haven't listened to Hedwig's thing at least
you.
40 times?
Yeah, by comparison, Sam and I, who have watched Game of Thrones many times together, have never skipped the intro.
I've watched
That's what I was.
Game of
that's what I
Thrones.
meant.
I've watched Game of Thrones, not literally end to end like I slept, but
don't know if you should admit this next bit publicly.
it adds up to hours of main theme. It's like an hour or something. Anyway, look, I think what Hans Zimmer has gone for, which he does in everything, is a really distilled sound of what the thing is. And what he's going for is regal, bit moody, real world, but also cinematic. Like, he wants to make the monarchy feel like us, but it's in a cinematic style, right? And he does that with organ, with simple chords, and then there's this feeling of like, I think he doesn't use it in the coronation, or well, not Hans Zimmer at all. I think it was Rupert Gregson-Williams on the first series, but doesn't use it in the coronation. But it's got that kind of coronation vibe to it. This kind of, and it's got a sense of like impetus, and it serves a purpose, guys. Like, it's not a failure, this theme. It's just not. You don't go away humming it. That's
We
the
didn't say
difference.
it.
I mean, I kind of alluded to it, but to kind of switch sides for a moment on that. What I do think, kind of in its purpose, what I think it does well is this. It's a totally different approach, which is intentionally kind of open-ended. And I think, another composer who does this really well is someone like Oliver Arnolds, whose music is very intentionally minimal. And so what it does is it leaves a lot of room for you to kind of sit with the image and let the image kind of tell that story. And then you as the viewer are kind of filling in the blanks, because you're not being delivered like, this is how you should feel and this is what you should think about it. And I think that can also be really effective. And, in where I do think this is effective is this theme and these chords are then used throughout the series. It's used on tons and tons of bits, where it's then, it just kind of gives you that succinct mood or feeling, and it kind of alludes to it, but then you're kind of filling in based on how the actor's performance was, or what just happened in the narrative, and thinking, oh, okay, and kind of connecting it. So it's almost like he doesn't have to really work that hard with the theme, and it just does its job.
I mean, it's made to be rearranged. I think it's
it's musical wallpaper, isn't it? Just
I think
background
more
for
than
the
that.
story to unfold on top of.
I think it's made to be.
It's not its own character. As for example, something like Hedwig's theme is distinct in world building in the way that it's constructed, and sort of this needs to blend into the background and let the story unfold on top of it. And you also don't really have to do much world building, seeing as it's actually in our world around historical events, whether they're accurate or not, that's up for debate. But more about the interactions and relationships between those people. And if you had too much of an invasive musical idea that was too distinct on its own, it would be distracting, I think. So that's what I mean in terms of wallpaper, meaning in the background, supporting, not as,
you're not using it as a derogatory term.
Exactly.
Which arguably
more like
is
a
better.
canvas.
Yeah, which arguably is better. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the purpose of a score. I mean, this is a main theme, so it's not.
It's the purpose of this score. I think like you wouldn't have John Williams score this series, and you wouldn't have Hans Zimmer do Harry Potter. I think they kind of require different.
Just wait until Amazon does the series.
Yeah.
The thing is, we're not talking about the score here. We're talking about the theme. So sometimes maybe a theme can be great and the score can be shit, or vice versa.
I think as well,
but that theme in kind of like you're building that material that then,
like Hedwig's theme, it was made to be arranged. That's my feeling on it, and made to be arranged in an even longer form thing than Harry Potter. This is a series that is ongoing, and you've got to assume that he wrote this theme, assuming that it would be reused many, many, many times, and it was.
Can I just interject with, so Jolene had a question that I think is very relevant to this. It's kind of, what do you think makes a theme memorable, and kind of what should be very important for a composer to consider?
That's the right question, in my opinion. I mean, what makes a theme effective first, and if it's how memorable it is, what makes it memorable? Great question.
I think there's a lot of different aspects that can make a theme memorable. I think obviously melodic construction, the highs and the lows, where it goes, the rises and the falls. You've got the harmony, which is a very important part. You see a lot of films nowadays this is very much generalizing, but I'm going to do it anyway. I tend to rely on sort of like a traditional 4-chord structure, which is not the most memorable harmonies, whereas you take something like Hedwig's theme, very unexpected, because I feel like the way to succeed in making harmony memorable is to subvert people's expectations. Or you could also rely on something like orchestration by using a distinct color that's not heard very often, or a distinct combination. A number of or any sort of combination of those three.
I think there's a kind of common thread between all the things you just said, and that's just creating something that's unique. Like if you find sort of a unique sound or a unique sort of harmonic progression or unique phrase that kind of sticks out, I think that then kind of grabs the listener's ear.
I think
And
that's true.
Sometimes the simplest of melodies can go on the simplest of harmonies and can be super memorable.
This is
So
it.
it's
Like,
not the
sorry, Ali.
Go
I
on.
was just,
Sorry,
I was just going to say, like, I think we can all agree. We're going on about John Williams, but John Williams is a master melody writer. Now, how many of those themes start with a fourth or a fifth?
Hashtag all of them.
It's all fourths and fifths, and the occasional sixth. But like, he very often starts it with comfort, that feeling of 5/1, or being very fixed in a harmony. So yes, I think there's certainly more focus on finding that new sound that you latch onto and doing something surprising. But John Williams actually is often very comfortable in that theme, and all these composers that write them melodically say that's the thing they spend the time on, is getting that melody just right. And one thing I'll just add on the crown theme, when actually looking at it as a main title, it's actually quite brave. He starts on kind of soft winds and soft organ, which for a main title, it's not punching you in the face. It's kind of luring you in, which is quite brave, really. Again, I'm playing kind of devil's advocate here because I'm not in love with it. But
I mean, the other thing, I haven't really said anything about the crown yet. I mean, I just wanted to say, like, it's functioning within a context where it's not expected to perform the same role as a Hedwig theme. So I think another way to think about it is that, if any of us were set the task of writing the crown main theme, we couldn't come in with a Hedwig's theme style approach. It would be the wrong approach for that brief or that idea or that project. So we also have to appreciate that it was composed within a context of needing to perform a certain function. So like I said earlier with Hedwig's theme, that kind of music very much draws attention to itself. This kind much less so. And depending on the philosophy of the director or the creative team that you're working with, you may find yourself pushed in either of those directions. And I think being a good composer is being adaptable and being able to write music that doesn't draw attention to itself, but is still extremely effective, or the opposite if that's required.
I think is it worth sort of saying now that just on the practicalities of writing a theme, how you approach it, because I think I don't know about you guys, but I found with short films or podcasts as well, which we can talk about, is if you're actually scoring them, it's because it's a shorter project, it's not going to take as much of your life to do. It's very easy to just start writing to the picture, even if you are writing melodically or whatever, but to just kind of put things on the picture straight away. But actually with these longer form things, they put the time into full, Hans Zimmer in particular, full suites, and John Williams's themes are fleshed out full orchestrations that are written away from the picture. They get them right, knowing what the purpose they serve. Like, how is that? Do you guys think that's applicable to a short film? Like, do you take the time away from that? And
I think you have to, no matter what the medium. I think you always need to write your theme and suite away, because you need to really clarify like the narrative intention behind it. I don't think you should ever just kind of go straight to the picture, because I think then you're sort of putting yourself at a disadvantage, because you're already being influenced by so many other things.
Well,
whereas when you write the theme, you're sort of approaching that.
Maybe this is not conventionally good wisdom, but I don't think that necessarily being influenced by the picture is a disadvantage. I think you want to feel that you are a part of this world that you're creating music for. And if there's something in the visuals, the cinematography, or the expression on a character's face, or the way they say a particular line that comes to you as you're writing to the picture, that can sometimes flick a switch in your mind being like, oh, now I know what this is.
Well,
Yeah, but
to
at the same
clarify,
time,
I'm not saying don't watch the film.
Right, no.
I'm just saying, like, you should take as much influence as you can, but I don't think you should start by writing to the picture. I think you need to sort those themes away from it and really understand it before you apply it.
And you don't want necessarily the visual to have to, support the theme that you're writing. Maybe it's slightly weaker if you wrote it directly to picture. I'm not saying it has to stand on its own as, concert music or anything like that, but at least making sure that it makes sense to you from how you understand the film itself, instead of relying on the film to support your music.
I think what
Mike's idea.
I think what Mike's kind of getting at is that it's important. Yeah, exactly. And the part that's to come is essentially more of a music editor role, where you've got your material and then you stick it and see what's, trying to make it stick. But I guess what I'm asking is, this is a short project. There's not much money. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I completely agree with you guys. But you can write a suite that's longer than the film and end up using 4 bars of it because that's what works for the film. Is that still going to be the best approach because you've thought it through and that means something more?
I'd say yes. Yeah. In my opinion, I think it requires that work, because I think you need to really kind of identify what that idea is before you can, I kind of always go in thinking, expect to throw stuff away. It's much better to have a lot more to kind of pick and pull from, because even if you wrote a full suite and you end up using just one chunk of it, the rest of that suite got you to that idea.
I mean, think about that's how films are made. They film significantly more content than that's ever going to be able to fit into the film, except for maybe
unless you're Zack Snyder
extended editions. I think it is important to cut away the fat effectively, because if you write more than you need, the bits that work will really stick out. In the same way that editing a book, you'll cut chapters that don't work, you'll cut passages that don't work.
Exactly, and if you write directly to picture, and that won't happen.
I kind of agree with you guys in one sense, but I do slightly disagree that I feel like if you put a restriction on the way that you're generating musical ideas and say, I can only get a good idea for this if I'm not looking at the picture, not doing it to the picture, or I've thought about it in a particular way, I feel like philosophically good ideas can come from anywhere. So I don't think that we should be too dictatorial and tell people the only way to do it is this way. I think it's possible to come up with a great idea while for a sequence while writing to the picture, and then maybe you delete everything you did and you say, okay, now I know what to do. That just wouldn't have come to you if you had written it in a suite format.
Well, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding sorry, go LA.
No, I mean, in my case, I was just answering Sam's question, as in like, how do you guys approach that, and that how I approach it. I would never dream of telling people how to write music.
Sometimes I think maybe I misunderstood what everybody was saying, but I didn't think it was necessarily saying that it has to be a written way. But in the same way that you wouldn't write it just a film, you wouldn't write it just away from the film. It's using both sort of methods of writing, because you can go interchangeably between those. You could go away, modify it, add to it, then go back, edit it in, and see how it works. I think they're exactly. It's a symbiotic relationship of watching it and then being away from it.
Yeah, I guess I think the important sort of takeaway is that kind of no matter your approach, you really kind of clarify what that idea is, and that you understand what purpose it serves. Like if it's a theme that represents a particular character or a particular idea, that a phrase I often use is that you kind of establish that vocabulary that you use within the film. So then you can use that as a sort of common storytelling language. You can say, if this represents this idea, that's why I'm using it in this scene.
Mm-hmm. John Williams calls it his glossary of themes, doesn't he? It's something that is in your brain.
I'll ask the glossary of John Williams, Sam Jones.
I've just seen it in interviews. He always kind of talks about when and particularly with sequels and things, he revisits the glossary of themes, and then it's under the fingers. So when he's looking at the picture, it's just kind of there, and you can improvise on that theme, but it's already well established. And I think you're right, Michael, saying like there's a flux between the two, but at some point you need something that you've agreed on, I would say that, and like I'm incredibly impatient, so I will usually be bracing myself to write it on paper. I like to have the theme written, but then as soon as I can, I'm writing to the picture or to whatever it is, it's a podcast or whatever. Just because I want to get into it, I want to get developing it. But yeah,
guys, just kind of quick time check. We're at 9. I think maybe we should have sort of a quick listen to the WandaVision theme, since that was brought up, and then we can spend a little bit of time just talking more about this project.
Sure,
sounds good.
I can find quickly this theme again. I don't know it, so I'm hoping that I'm finding the right thing. Okay, here's a song called WandaVision theme. This one seems promising.
Okay.
I was misled by the string ostinato at the beginning.
Oh, something's playing, man.
That was awesome.
I've watched every
great.
episode. I've watched every episode that's been released so far, and I've never heard that in its entirety. And the reason is because this actually plays at the end of every episode.
Because it's not Hedwig's theme.
Not at the beginning. No, but because of how streaming platforms are set up, they time out. So it's not like Netflix where you have the option. This actually times out to the next episode. At least mine does. Maybe there's a way of turning off. But yeah, it's great. I really like that.
It's such a
really
lovely
great.
idea to just take. It's such a simple idea to build on. It's like little discordant chord resolving, little discordant chord and crunchy resolving. It's like
It's
such
very
a simple
like-
idea, but it's so compelling.
It's
Yeah,
very like
I'd say
Ant-Man.
that's the most memorable kind of bit for me, is that if I'm thinking about it now, after only hearing it once, that's kind of what I'm remembering, is just that leading tone resolving.
Yeah, it's very like Ant-Man. It's the same composer as Ant-Man, and he's done a great score to that as well. What I would say is that it's until the voice comes in, it feels very Marvel, which is appropriate. But like he could have gone totally out there, because like, bear in mind, guys, if you've not seen this program, I won't give anything away, but it is very, very different to every other Marvel film. Like they've really pushed the boat out, and it's really interesting as a result. So he could have done something really odd with the theme even, but what he's done is keep it kind of focused and central to. I think it makes total sense for the character actually. Yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah.
So I guess to kind of wrap up, a lot of what we talked about, because we also I asked the chat a little while ago what they thought, what everybody there was thinking kind of makes a theme memorable. And there was some other answers too of, kind of finding unique sounds, and also, just kind of getting like nailing in on a sort of specific mood, and that sort of thing. So I think kind of, I mean, what would you guys say, kind of to sort of wrap up a lot of what we talked about? For me, I think it's maybe finding a unique sort of either sound or phrase and kind of repeating that can help make something memorable and kind of stick within.
Yeah, that for sure. Or an interesting choice of instrument, like in the Mandalorian. I mean, you can remember that one because it's so weird, and yeah, so interesting choices in instruments as well.
I'm going to be annoying and answer by raising kind of another question, which is one thing we haven't really talked about, which is that there's opening theme and then there's thematic writing, and we've kind of talked a little bit about opening theme or like theme of the show, but actually we're kind of dealing with writing themes that work when you score them, so they have different priorities, I think. So I'm going to answer about the theme to the show, and I think that comes from a lengthy discussion with whoever you're writing the music for, the show, like what are their priorities, and you need to distill something down musically to enhance whatever you're seeing or hearing, and I think we're talking about a little selfishly from a musical point of view that we need to find that particular sound that stands out and all of this, but actually if it's a theme for a character that you're going to arrange, it doesn't necessarily need to stand out. It just needs to absolutely represent something.
It needs to understand its role at the
yeah,
end of the day,
exactly.
Right?
It needs to be purposeful is what I'm getting at. Yeah. And so it really depends on what you're trying to represent musically. That's what I would say. That's an annoyingly ambiguous answer, and I'm sorry.
Michael, what about you?
I'm sorry, I was lost thinking about what Sam was. Come back to me in a second.
Shane, what do you think, are some kind of key takeaways that might help?
I mean, one aspect of it that's maybe just my own bias is I'm not above just the kind of sensation of just what the music and visuals feels like on a moment-to-moment level, away from the intellectual pursuits of what's the harmonic progression, and does the melody stand up to scrutiny, and can it be repeated later. Sometimes just the feeling that you get within the moment of the color that you see on the screen, that you hear, sometimes that can be extremely striking and memorable. And I'm not like on a level of abstraction below thinking about it as a piece of music. I'm just thinking about it as an experience that I'm having. And that is one way. If you can capture some kind of striking phenomenological experience, that can be really powerful.
You mentioned the White Walkers, Mike. That's a good example of that. Or like the Joker from Dark Knight, where it's really just a quality to the sound that makes you feel something.
Yeah, I think some of that is also, it's really hard to sit here and again kind of like, give a sort of roadmap to like, to find this emotion is this chord progression, because it just doesn't work out of context. But I think that in itself is maybe part of the answer of sort of finding it, is you can know what doesn't work. So it's really understanding what that emotion or that feeling that you're after, and then trying things knowing, well, it's not this, and those will kind of help you get closer to what it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Michael, what about you?
Oh, I was just going to say, piggybacking off Shane's comment about that sort of visceral feeling you get from a certain sound. I think an important thing to, maybe not in terms of writing a theme, but to see if a theme that you've written works, is to obviously listen to it out of the context in which it will be placed and see if it encapsulates the spirit and character of what you're trying to write to. Like I know, for example, thinking about Sam's lover, John Powell, when it comes to writing action cues and things like that, he'll oftentimes put it in his car and drive around to it. And if it doesn't make him exceed the speed limit, he'll go home and rewrite it, because clearly it's not encapsulated that chase feeling that he needs to embody for that specific scene. So I think having a visceral reaction to your own music, as self-indulgent as it may seem, is an important aspect to creating a theme that works in context, because if it works out of context, you know that the visual will only magnify, or I should say the music will only magnify the visual and what you're trying to accomplish there.
I think I just add to that, Michael, as well, that as with any piece of music, dragging someone into the room while you listen to it is a hugely helpful thing. Even if they don't say anything, you immediately listen to it with fresh ears.
You start listening with their ears.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that enables
And their
you
ears
to
are
be
so
more...
mean.
yeah. But it enables you to be objective, doesn't it? And to kind of see it apart from, because you're so in it by that point that you need to separate yourself from it and see, is this appropriate? Is this as purposeful as I want it to be?
Guys, I'll just kind of wrap up talking a little bit more about this project. So actually what I could do, well, actually, I don't know if I'll be able to sort of share effectively, but we've got this film. It's a short film that's a little over 11 minutes or so. And really, it's kind of the last half of it or so that uses music, because there's a big part in it that really just uses diegetic sort of background club music that's there's just sort of like a house party, and so it doesn't require music through that bit, and is also something that was a conscious choice with the director. So there's kind of the opening of it and the latter half of it that are really a chance to kind of put, you know, an idea in there. What we've got is I've just kind of organized it into like a Google Drive so that you can download it. I'm going to put in I've got it in the Twitch chat. I'm not sure exactly if, because I'm not sort of set up on Restream, but maybe one of us can share it to the YouTube chat as well. Shane's on it. So I'm going to put this in the Twitch chat now, which is just a Google form. Only reason I thought this would be effective is because just so we can kind of trace where the film goes. It's not that we don't trust any of you. It's more that if I put a link just free out on the internet, we don't know who can download it. You know, it might be picked up by some bot and placed somewhere else. So there's just a simple Google form that I made for you to just put your email of where you want it sent to. We're not going to use this email for anything. It's not like we're kind of collecting and going to sell it to Facebook. It's just there purely for this, so don't worry about that. Yeah, if you're interested in doing this, then send it, just use that form. It's all it is. It explains it. There's just a thing to put your email. I'll send the video on, and then, I think even if you don't have time to do this project, or don't have time to kind of fully commit to it, give it a go. No matter what your level of experience is, it's also, the point of it is we're all here just to kind of share and help each other learn. So don't, be worried if you don't feel up to it or something. We're not expecting, everybody to fully commit to this. I think any kind of level is good. And if you just want some feedback at some point, then it'll be fantastic.
Well, at the same time, it'd be also interesting to hear people's frustrations while doing this project as well, because it's great to know about the successes that people have in doing scores and all that, but it'd also be equally helpful to know what doesn't work.
Yeah, so I think also, even if you don't get a chance to do it yourself too, or if you're super busy, do tune into the other chats as well, because I think especially some of these feedback sessions that we'll have on kind of the works in progress, and then again with Vicky, will probably be super interesting even if you didn't do it. So come and join and get a chance to kind of learn from everyone else's. And we'll have quite a few weeks where we can kind of have a look at works in progress. So in a couple weeks' time, we're going to have an orchestration review. You could, use a kind of initial draft of this and submit that, or you could submit some other work and share that with us for to kind of look at live on the stream. We'll also then 2 weeks after that have a chance to look at the drafts just with us before we kind of bring them to Vicky. And then in week 6, a chance for her to review it and for you to get feedback from her. So I think, I'm really excited about it clearly, and, that we get so many chances to kind of dig into these reviews a bit more. That's definitely been something that we found, very successful from kind of previous seasons of this. And, you know, feel free to ask questions and things like that, or if you get stuck or whatever, just reach out to us on any of the social media or whatever. And also feel free to share with any friends or people that didn't join tonight, but you think might enjoy this. Feel free to share the link. This is open for anybody to
We should post the link on social media after this and everything. I'm sure we have plans to do that. But
yes. So yeah, I mean, most of our communication coming out will sort of be link in bio to this form. So there will be plenty of ways to find it, and we'll put it up on our website as well. So we can just kind of have an easy access. Cool. Well, this is a lot of fun. Oh, also, just quick note, we didn't kick Vincenzo out. Vincenzo is just,
okay.
he is having just some kind of complications tonight, and so he couldn't join us, but he'll be back in future weeks. So, you know, don't worry, he's still with us.
Don't worry, Vincenzo lovers in the chat, of which I'm sure, well, I'm one.
I know. I know. There was many more people at the beginning of this, and as soon as they saw that Vincenzo wasn't here,
they just closed the stream. Yeah,
I should have been the first thing I said. Cool, guys. Well, I think maybe we'll wrap it up from there. So thank you guys so much again. We're really excited to be back and doing more of these, and looking forward to future weeks. So go tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your grandma, come join with us.
We want to hear your grandmother's work.
Yes. We'll see you next week.